The invitation never came. Not by mail, not by text, not even one of those lazy family group messages with glittery gifs and fake cheer. But I found out anyway because my aunt posted the save the date on Facebook. Can't wait to celebrate Daniel and Savannah. The big day is almost here. And just like that, I knew my brother was getting married and I wasn't invited. I didn't react right away. I didn't scream or cry or call anyone to ask why. I just sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone, reading every comment like it was some riddle I was supposed to solve. Before we dive into this mess, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I waited 2 days before I drove to my mother's house. I didn't go there to beg. I went there to conduct an inspection. That's what I do. I'm a landscape architect. I look at terrain, I analyze drainage, and I determine if a foundation is solid or if the ground is about to slide away. When I walked into the living room, the air smelled like expensive vanilla candles and avoidance. My mother, Patricia, was arranging hydrangeas in a vase that cost more than my first car. My brother, Daniel, was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, looking exactly like the golden boy who had never been told no in 26 years. They didn't look guilty, they looked managed. Like they had rehearsed a script. I kept it simple. I asked if the post was true. My mother didn't even flinch. She smiled that tight, practiced smile she saves for contractors she's trying to underpay. She told me yes, it was true. She said it was going to be a small, intimate affair in Napa Valley. Very curated, very soft. Then came the pivot. She reached out and touched my arm. A gesture that was supposed to feel comforting but felt like a boundary violation. She said that Savannah, my brother's fiancée, had a very specific vision. She wanted an ethereal aesthetic, whispers, pastels, soft focus. And then she said the words that I will remember for the rest of my life. She said, "Jasmine, you are just so intense. You are logistical. You are sharp angles and spreadsheets. You simply don't fit the vibe." I stood there, processing the data. I don't fit the vibe. I am the one who balanced this family's checkbooks for 5 years. I am the one who navigated the permits for the extension on this very house. I am the one who managed Daniel's college applications because he couldn't be bothered to read the instructions. I am the structural integrity of this family, and they were telling me I was ruining the wallpaper. But they weren't done. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. He didn't look ashamed. He looked relieved that Mom was doing the heavy lifting. He told me they had a favor to ask. Since I wasn't coming to the wedding, and since I was so good with details, they wanted me to stay in Seattle and manage the vendor emails remotely. They didn't want Savannah to stress about timelines or deposits on her big day. They wanted me to be the invisible project manager for a party I was banned from attending. My mother framed it as a kindness. She said they were doing this for me, so I wouldn't feel awkward trying to blend in with Savannah's influencer friends. She said I would be happier working behind the scenes where I excelled. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They were stripping me of my title as sister and rehiring me as unpaid staff, and they expected me to say thank you. I looked at them, really looked at them, and for the first time, I didn't see my family. I saw a client who couldn't afford my rates. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just nodded, turned around, and walked out the door. The foundation had officially cracked. I didn't drive home to cry into a pillow. I drove home to balance the books. I walked into my apartment, my sanctuary, paid for with my own money, designed with my own hands, and I opened my laptop. I didn't open social media. I opened a folder labeled Family Administration. Most people have photo albums. I had spreadsheets. For 5 years, I had been the silent architect of their lives. I pulled up the wedding logistics file. It was a masterpiece of organizational labor. I had categorized the vendor contracts, calculated the deposit schedules, and color-coded the delivery timelines. I had even run a sun path analysis on the Napa venue to ensure the lighting would be optimal for Savannah's photos at 5 in the evening. I looked at the screen, at the hundreds of hours of unpaid labor represented in those cells. They wanted the aesthetic, but they didn't want the architect. I didn't feel sad. I felt the cold, sharp clarity of a structural engineer realizing a building is condemned. I selected the file. I didn't hesitate. I dragged it to the trash and emptied the bin. Then I opened my banking app. There was a savings sub-account titled Daniel's Wedding Gift. It held $8,500. I had spent 2 years saving that money. I was going to gift them the deposit for the reception venue, a surprise to help them start their life debt-free. I looked at the number. It wasn't a gift anymore. It was severance pay. I opened a travel site. I didn't look at dates for the future. I looked at the exact dates of the wedding weekend. I typed in Bali. If they wanted a dry, manicured vineyard in Napa, I wanted the opposite. I wanted life. I wanted humidity, chaos, and jungle. I wanted green so deep it felt like it was breathing. I found a wellness retreat in Ubud. 5 stars, private infinity pool overlooking the rice terraces, no cell reception in the common areas. The cost for 10 days, including a first-class ticket, was exactly $8,400. I clicked book. The confirmation email hit my inbox at the exact same moment a text came in from my mother telling me to make sure I sent the vendor contact list before I went to bed because Savannah was panicking about the napkins. I didn't reply. I simply closed the laptop. The transaction was complete. I had just reallocated my resources from a failing investment to a high-yield asset, myself. I arrived in Bali 3 days later. Stepping off the plane wasn't just a change of location. It was a sensory recalibration. The air was heavy, smelling of clove cigarettes, wet earth, and frangipani. It wrapped around me like a warm blanket, instantly loosening the tension I hadn't realized I was carrying in my shoulders. I checked into my villa. It was open air, no walls, just bamboo shades and the sound of a river rushing somewhere below. I turned off my project manager brain. I stopped calculating timelines. I stopped anticipating disasters. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't holding up the sky for anyone. I was just existing. Meanwhile, 7,000 miles away in Napa, the sky was beginning to crack. I knew this because my phone, which I had forgotten to put on Do Not Disturb for 1 hour, lit up with a notification from the venue coordinator. It wasn't a text to me. It was a forwarded email chain that I was still copied on. The subject line was in all caps, electrical load failure. Apparently, Savannah's vision for the reception involved 3,000 vintage Edison bulbs strung across the courtyard. It was a beautiful vision. I knew about it. I also knew that the venue's historic wiring couldn't handle the amperage. That's why, 3 months ago, I had drafted a contract for an external generator and a dedicated power distribution box. I had the permit ready to file, but I wasn't there to file it. I poured myself a glass of fresh guava juice and watched a monkey swing from a coconut tree. I imagined the scene in Napa. Patricia, my mother, staring at a fuse box she didn't understand. Savannah screaming that her fairy tale lighting was going to blow the power grid. Daniel standing there uselessly, waiting for someone to hand him a solution. They didn't just exclude a sister. They fired the only person who knew the difference between a volt and an amp. The tension in my chest didn't return. Instead, I took a deep breath of the jungle air, and I finally understood the difference between being needed and being valued. They needed me to keep the lights on, but they didn't value the person flipping the switch. I put my phone in the safe, locked it, and went to get a massage. The lights in Napa were not my problem. The silence in Bali was so profound it felt like a physical presence, a soft weight on my skin that kept the world at bay. But back in Napa, the noise was becoming deafening. I didn't need to hear it to know it was happening. I just needed to look at the notification badges on my phone, which were multiplying like bacteria in a petri dish. It was 48 hours before the ceremony. In wedding time, this is the red zone. This is when the facade meets the physics. I scrolled past the missed calls and opened a text from my mother. It wasn't a greeting. It was a demand, typed in all caps. Devoid of punctuation. A stream of consciousness panic. The florist is leaving, she says the contract is void, you need to call her now. I set the phone down on the teak table next to my breakfast bowl of dragon fruit. I took a sip of coffee. Then, calmly, I opened the deleted folder in my mind to retrieve the file on the florist. Blooms and Briar. High-end, artistic, and notoriously strict about contracts. 3 weeks ago, Savannah had decided she hated the roses and wanted cascading wisteria. It was a $5,000 change order. I had negotiated the addendum. I had drafted the revised payment schedule. But because I was too intense and didn't fit the vibe, I hadn't been there to countersign the final approval or release the funds from the escrow account I managed for them. They thought the wedding ran on vibes. They forgot it ran on signatures. I looked at the text again. You need to call her. No. I didn't. There is a concept in structural engineering that applies perfectly to family dynamics. It's often called the load-bearing scapegoat. In toxic systems, the person identified as the problem, the one who is too loud, too critical, too difficult, is usually the only one holding the roof up. The family projects all their chaos onto this person, blaming them for the stress, but simultaneously relying on them to absorb that stress. They think if they just remove the difficult person, they will finally have peace. They imagine the scapegoat is a wall blocking their view. So, they take a sledgehammer to the wall. They knock it down, congratulating themselves on the new open concept, the airy aesthetic, the peace. And then they are genuinely shocked when the ceiling collapses on their heads. They don't realize that the wall wasn't blocking the light, it was carrying the weight of the entire house. My family had removed the wall, now they were standing in the rubble, screaming at the bricks to stack themselves back up. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail from Patricia. I played it on speaker, letting her shrill voice mix with the sound of the jungle rain. Jasmine, stop being dramatic. I know you're seeing these. Savannah is having a panic attack. The florist says she won't set up the arch without the deposit release. Just get on Zoom and fix it. We don't need you here. We just need you to do your job. Do your job. The audacity was almost impressive. They still didn't see me as a person with feelings who had been hurt. They saw me as a malfunctioning appliance. To them, my intensity was annoying when I was present, but essential when they needed a permit filed or a contract enforced. They wanted the fruit without tending the root. I realized then that this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about a fundamental misunderstanding of my value. They thought my competence was a natural resource they were entitled to mine forever. They thought they could insult the architect and still live in the building. I picked up the phone. I didn't call the florist. I didn't call my mother. I opened the banking app one last time. I checked the joint event account, the one I had access to, the one that required my digital key to release funds. The balance was zero because I had moved my contribution to Bali. The contracts were all pending my approval. I held the power to save them. I could make one call, transfer the funds from my personal savings, apologize to the florist, and smooth it all over. I could be the glue again. I could hold the house up for one more day. My thumb hovered over the screen. The old Jasmine, the sister who just wanted to be good enough, would have done it. She would have fixed it, and hoped that this time, they would say thank you. But the humidity of Bali had warped that version of me. I wasn't the glue anymore. I was the girl with the margarita. I closed the app, the roof was going to come down, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be underneath it to catch the debris. I read the messages again. Jasmine, stop being dramatic, we just need you to do your job. Savannah is having a panic attack. My thumb hovered over the block contact button. It wasn't an act of aggression. It wasn't a punishment. It was simply the sound of a door locking. Have you ever left a house for the last time? You don't slam the door. You don't scream at the walls. You just check your pockets for your keys, turn off the lights, and pull the door shut until you hear the click. It's a quiet sound. A final sound. That's what this was. I tapped block on Patricia. I tapped block on Daniel. I tapped block on Savannah. Then I went to my email and set an autoresponder for anyone not in my contacts, stating that I was currently on vacation with no access to email and would respond to all inquiries upon my return. I put the phone down. The silence in the jungle was absolute. No notifications, no demands, no emergencies that were actually just other people's lack of planning. I felt a phantom vibration in my pocket, a muscle memory of anxiety, but the device itself was dark. I laid back in the hammock. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet. I wasn't wondering if I was enough. I wasn't calculating my worth based on how many fires I could put out. I was just Jasmine, breathing in the scent of rain and earth, listening to the monkeys chatter in the trees. Back in Napa, the wedding was proceeding, but it was a hollow shell. I saw the photos later, screenshots sent by Kelsey, my cousin, the only ally I had left unblocked. They looked beautiful. The lighting was perfect thanks to my sun path analysis. The venue was stunning thanks to my negotiation. Savannah looked ethereal in her dress, but if you looked closely, you could see the strain. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Daniel looked lost, his eyes scanning the crowd for the sister, who was supposed to be managing the timeline. Kelsey texted me saying that everyone was asking where I was. Your mom told Aunt Carol you were unwell and couldn't travel. But then Aunt Carol saw your Instagram story of the monkeys. I laughed out loud, a sound that startled a bird on the railing. I hadn't even realized I'd posted it. But I was glad I did. Let them see the truth. Let them see that while they were drowning in a sea of logistical nightmares of their own making, I was floating. Kelsey sent another message telling me the generator blew halfway through the reception. The lights went out during the first dance. It was chaos. Dad asked why no one rented a backup. Mom just started crying. I closed my eyes. I didn't feel glee. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt distant. Like I was watching a movie about people I used to know. The vacuum I left behind was sucking the air out of their perfect day, and for the first time, I wasn't rushing in to fill it. I opened my camera roll and recorded a short video, just the rain falling on the giant leaves outside my villa, the steam rising from the jungle floor. I didn't caption it with a dig. I didn't mention the wedding. I just wrote, "Peace." And then I posted it. I returned to Seattle on a Tuesday. The rain was falling, gray and steady, but for the first time, it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like a clean slate. I didn't go to my mother's house. I didn't go to check on Daniel. I took a ride straight to my apartment, unlocked the door, and breathed in the scent of a space that belonged entirely to me. The fallout was waiting, of course. It lived in the voicemails I didn't listen to and the emails that went straight to a folder I named Archive. From what Kelsey told me later, the wedding had been a financial and social crater. Savannah's parents were furious about the generator failure. The venue was threatening to sue over the damage to the wiring. Daniel was currently sleeping on a friend's couch because the ethereal vibe of his marriage had evaporated the moment the lights went out. They were drowning in the wreckage of a house they had built without a blueprint. And they expected me to show up with a bucket. But I wasn't carrying buckets anymore. I was drawing new plans. 2 weeks after I returned, I sat in a conference room in downtown Seattle. Across from me was the chief executive officer of a massive tech firm. He was looking at my portfolio, specifically the complex, structural retaining walls I had designed for a cliffside property 3 years ago. "This is aggressive," he said, tapping the page. "It's intense. Most people would have tried to hide the engineering, but you made it the feature." I looked him in the eye. "Gravity is intense," I said. "If you want something to last, you don't hide the strength, you highlight it." He hired me on the spot. It was the biggest contract of my career. He didn't want soft. He didn't want whispers. He wanted structure. He wanted someone who could look at a chaotic, unstable hillside and build something that wouldn't move. He valued the exact thing my family had thrown away. I went home that night and opened a bottle of wine. Not the cheap stuff I used to buy when I was saving for their gifts, but a bottle I picked because I liked the label. I sat on my balcony and looked at the skyline. I realized then that I hadn't lost a family. I had simply stepped out of a role that was too small for me. I was the load-bearing wall they tried to treat like a window treatment, and now that I was gone, I was free to support things that actually wanted to stand. To the uninvited, I know you're out there. I know you're watching this. And maybe you're sitting in the uncomfortable silence of being the one they forgot, or the one they hid, or the one they just didn't want in the picture. I know the specific pain of wondering why you were too much for the people who should have loved you the most. You spend years editing yourself. You try to be quieter, softer, easier. You try to fit into the frame they built. But listen to me. You were never the problem. You were the structure. They excluded you because your reality threatened their fantasy. They didn't want to see the work it took to keep the lights on. They just wanted to enjoy the glow. When they don't invite you to the table, don't wait in the hallway. Don't beg for a folding chair. Go build your own house. Build it with people who love your intensity. Build it with people who value your strength. Build it so strong that when the storms come, and they always come, you are the one who is safe, dry, and at peace. Being the empty chair at their table isn't a punishment, it's a promotion. You are the architect of your own life now. And trust me, the view is so much better from here. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to build your own table because they wouldn't give you a seat, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.